So if you go to Amazon and you do advanced searches, you will find all kinds of not just books of people that you might want to partner with, but look at the descriptions of the verbiage that they are using. And then you can take that verbiage, and if you've trained your AI on what you do, you can populate that verbiage in there and then tell AI that based on this of who you are, and tell it to, without using the same words. I mean, there's a whole prompt for that I use. Literally, you don't have to think this stuff up yourself. It's already out there.
Welcome to Life After Corporate, your ultimate guide for making the leap from corporate leader to entrepreneur. I'm Deb Boulanger, entrepreneur, executive leader, and founder of the Launch Lab for Women Entrepreneurs. This is your time to break through the glass ceiling once and for all and get your ticket to the C-suite. Come back each week to get the leading strategies, advice, and tools that will give you the skills and confidence you need to replace your corporate paycheck. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friend. And if you are new to our show, welcome home. This is where new-ish and oldish entrepreneurs get the best advice for how to stand out in an ever-changing market, how to position yourself, how to market yourself, how to get good at sales, how to launch services, how to price, all the things that coaches and consultants and other service providers need to know. And this interview has been a long time coming. My guest today is Patty Farmer. She is an award-winning marketing and media strategist, international speaker, podcast host of her own, magazine publisher, and seven-figure event producer. We want to ask her about that. And as a global influencer and thought leader, she works with CEOs, service-based entrepreneurs, coaches, and speakers just like you, who are experts in their field to help them fully identify their expertise, attract and convert, the key word, their ideal buyers, gain massive visibility, package their knowledge, and position them in the marketplace to leverage their platforms and create marketing strategies that are profitable, not painful. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Patty Farmer.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. You're right. It's been a long time coming, but I am happy to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation, especially, in this season, right? And more people are leaving the corporate world to package their expertise as coaches and consultants. Now with the news that Amazon is taking out a whole layer of middle management and other companies are following suit, I imagine that there's just going to be more and more people hopping into this pool. So let's dive in. First, a little bit about your background and story. How did you create your marketing agency? Were you ever in corporate? Tell us how you got to where you are today.
It's actually kind of an interesting story. Of course, we all think our story is interesting, right? But I was in corporate. I worked in banking almost all my working life. And then I got into the mortgage industry in the bank. And I kind of worked my way up from there until I ended up owning a company. It went up for sale and I bought it. So that kind of worked for me. But
that's one way to enter entrepreneurship. Just buy the damn company.
I know, right? And while I was doing that, I also had a marketing agency. So I had both brick and mortar. And then in 2008, we all know, kind of what happened in 2008. Luckily for me, it was a blessing. But 2 months before that happened, my husband got transferred to Dallas. We lived in Las Vegas. He got transferred to Dallas and we moved. So I was able to sell both of the companies before everything really kind of went down. So total blessing there. But then when I moved to Dallas, all of a sudden it was like, oh, what am I going to do? Because it certainly wasn't the time to open up another mortgage company. And here I was living in the Dallas Metroplex, right? And I didn't know not one person. And I have to tell you, Deb, that day, that first day, I really had a pity party. I was like, what in the world am I going to do? I don't know one person. I'm going to have to pivot and redefine myself. What am I going to do? And then all of a sudden, I just thought to myself, you know what, Patty? I mean, let's think about this. You're in a metroplex with millions of people that you don't know anybody. So put your big girl panties on. And what an opportunity this is. And I walked over to the refrigerator and I took a Post-it note out and I wrote 100,000 and I stuck it to the refrigerator. And when my husband came home, he said, what is this? And I said, I made a decision. Marketing has always been the thing that I did well. It's also the thing that brought me in all of my strategic partners. I said, so I'm going to open up a boutique marketing agency. I'm going to cater only to women, which is who I love because I have 6 daughters that come from a family of 5 girls. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I am going to be able to know 100,000 people, make $100,000. I'm going to do it in my first year here. I did it in 9 months, and the rest, they say, is history.
That is incredible and so important. And one of the things I want us to talk about today too is partnerships and collaborations, because I think it's one of the most overlooked strategies for entrepreneurs. But let's first start talking about how to stand out because of this influx of people who have left corporate to monetize their expertise as coaches, consultants. Most grossly underestimate what it takes to actually get to your first 6 figures. I think that's an important milestone that most people want to hit, getting close to replacing a hefty corporate salary. So what do you advise people? Like, how do you create a standout position in a market that's already crowded?
I would say the most important thing first is to really establish what your brand is. And by that, I don't mean your branding. Brand and branding are 2 different things. And I think what happens is when people step away from corporate and they want to be an entrepreneur, they get all excited about expressing themselves in a way that they have never been able to do it before. And so they get kind of caught up on, what colors and what their logo is going to look like and all of those type of things. But the reality actually is that before that, those are just your brand assets. You really need to figure out what is going to be your brand. Like, what's the compelling narrative that's going to set you apart, right? That's going to define you and your business. Because what people really don't always realize up front is what your brand really is what people think, feel, say, and most importantly, share about you. So it's really important to have that compelling brand that speaks directly to your audience's needs, right? And what it is that they want so that they know, oh, wow. And then they recognize you everywhere. So I think that where people need to spend the time in the beginning is what do they want to be known for, who they are, and really to create the brand. After the brand, then everything after that is about brand strategy and assets and all that stuff. But always thinking about what is your brand and that compelling story of making sure that your customer is always the hero and your brand is just the guide.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that. I knew we were going to be singing from the same hymnal in this conversation. Yeah, what I call the logo, the colors, all that when you first start out is really fake progress. It feels like you're building a business, but you're not doing anything that's really going to get you clients. And so creating that, what you want to be known for, I am the one who is so vitally important. And the other thing you said is speaking directly to the voice of the client that you're trying to attract. There's so much what I call narcissistic marketing out there where it's like, hey, I did this and I am this and I'm going to be here and I'm going to be there. And no one really gives a shit. What we care about is what you're going to do for me and how well do you understand my pain. So, standing out is really important. And one of the things I think that's really hard is developing that brand story. So how do you guide people in creating that narrative? How do you stand up? I remember a friend of mine and I, when I first launched this business, we would go to networking events and in the car on the way, we would like practice our elevator pitch on each other, just trying to refine it. But how do you get to that perfect positioning?
Well, I think the most important thing is to ask yourself the question, what is it that I want people to feel? Like, I don't think people always think about that. What is it that you want them to feel after they interact with you? Because, first of all, depending upon what it is that your business is, I'm sure there are many, many other people that do that too. I mean, I'm in marketing, right? And the marketing space is really huge. So how are you going to differentiate yourself from everybody else? That's how you stand out from a crowded marketplace. What do you want to be known for so that when people hear about you, they're like, oh, I know her, right? And not only that, But when people hear about what you do, those are titles.
Hmm.
And people get caught up on titles. And, just like when you introduced me, right? Oh, I'm a this, I'm a this, I'm a this. But the fact of the matter is, there's a million other people that are a that and a that and a that. The question is, what are your core values? What do you stand for? Who are you at your core? Which is what I like to tell people all the time. Because even when people ask me, I think people can sometimes be intimidated by titles, right? And people love to use them, right? But the fact of the matter is, it isn't really who you are. Like at my core, yes, I am all those titles. That's what I do. But who I am at my core is that I'm an idea generator, I'm a people connector, I'm a revenue multiplier, but most of all, I'm a relationship builder. And that is what I want to be known for, is that I always build relationships with people, whether it's podcast hosts, people that at all across the board, everybody I touch in my day to day, I want them to walk away and say, it was not a transaction. Nothing is a
Yeah.
transaction. It's got to be transformative. Because here's the question I think we need to know and ask is, we are not in the information business. Google is in the information business. We are in the transformation business, right? So you want to be really clear. Like, I'm an educator at heart. I just can't help myself, but I'm still not in the information business. So you have to say to yourself, what is it that I want to be known for, that I want people to not just buy a book? Like, they can buy a book, they can go to Google. We have AI right now. They can find out all the information that they want and what they need. But what they really need is, how do I implement it? How does it apply to me? How am I going to stand out? What am I going to do to differentiate myself? And I think it is something that we don't always think about. And I'll give you a really quick example. I teach this all the time. And one time I had this girl, she's like, Patty, I'm a realtor. Like, everybody knows one or 20 of them. How in the world am I going to stand out? What's my differentiator? I said, I don't know. Let's talk about it. And so she kind of told me that before she was a realtor, that she actually worked for a builder. And when she worked for the builder, she worked in the negotiation department. And she was a relatively new realtor. And I said, well, that's your differentiator. She said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know. If I was buying a house, I'd want to know and know a realtor who knew everything that they could negotiate on and everything they couldn't. I mean, that's a differentiator, right? So you got to ask yourself, what do I do differently? And if you don't feel like you do, you need to create something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with the relational versus transactional. I mean, there are people out there that you'll meet who are purely about the transaction. Are you going to buy for me or are you not going to buy for me? I'm a relator, similar to you, Patty. And I think that what's missing in this market of entrepreneurship is that true mentorship, that true customization. I think we're done with cookie cutter courses of, hey, I made 7 figures doing this. I can teach it to you and you'll make 7 figures too. And that's just not the way it works. So when you get a client who's coming to you for the first time, are you working with new entrepreneurs, more established entrepreneurs, when they're not getting that traction in the market, when their messages aren't landing, when they're, on LinkedIn 5 times a week, on Instagram, twice a day, and yet they have this great visibility, but they're not converting any clients. So how do you help them generate revenue from their visibility? What are some of the things they're missing?
Oh, I love this question so much. Um, so one of the things that I do is, I usually, when somebody comes to talk to me, I go audit that right away. I want to audit what they're doing. And here's something that I find is very, very common that people do is, some have mapped out their customer journey. Most have not, right? And in that customer journey, some people are just aware. They're just becoming aware that they have that problem, right? And then some people are becoming aware, but they haven't quite decided that they want to do something about it yet. And then they get to the point where now they're ready to do something about it. They want to take some action. They're just not sure who it is that they're going to hire. And then they get to the point where they're like, oh, now I am actively looking for the right person to hire. And then once they hire that person, they're at the point now where, how do you make them a raving fan? I mean, there's some brands out there, I don't have to mention any names, that, people line up around the corner every time something new happens, right? So that is the different stages. But here's the common mistake. What happens is when we're marketing and we're doing our messaging, we try to talk to them all at the same time. Like that's the biggest mistake, right? Now, do you need to talk to them all? Yes, but not in the same post, not in the same blog post, not in the same social media post, not in the same messaging, right? So you just need to be aware. Who is it that I'm talking to? Am I talking to people in the awareness stage? Am I talking to the people in the interested stage? And then you need to craft all your messaging to speak to the person that's your avatar in that stage, because that's really where it's important, because otherwise it's just not landing with them because they're not there yet. They don't relate to it yet. And you need to be able to speak to people so that they're like, oh my gosh, she's talking exactly to me. I have to tell you, Deb, I have never, ever in all 23 years I've been in business had a sales call. Never had a sales conversation, because to me, it's really all about service, right? Sales is service if you do it right. And if you're not worrying about transactions and you're really thinking about building a relationship with somebody, you're not having a sales call, right? It's really not just that they are trying to see if you're for them, but are they for you, right? And so I think that when your friends become your clients and your clients become your friends, that's where the magic really happens. And so I think making sure that every message you put out there, no matter what it is, whether it's social media, an email, a landing page, a text message, whatever it is, be really clear who you're talking to and in what stage they're at so that you don't muddy the waters.
I think that's so vitally important because, a lot of new entrepreneurs or new service-based businesses are out there and they have a solution, right? But they're also a solution in search of a problem. And if
Seth Godin said that.
oh, really? So if there's no identified problem, then, the heavy lift in educating the market, you can't educate the market enough to tell them they have a problem if they're not aware that they have a problem. And the ideal place to be is for people who know they have a problem and they're searching for a solution. Those are the people who are your low-hanging fruit and just need to discover you. You mentioned AI before, and I know you and I share an interest in AI. We're both members of the Dames, which is a wonderful professional network for women entrepreneurs. How do you think people misusing AI? Let's start talking about that. How are they misusing AI? And what do you believe the potential is? And how does that impact brand differentiation? I mean, can you have brand differentiation in the age of AI?
Oh boy, there's a lot in there and I just love it so much. So yes, I feel like how people are misusing it is that they are allowing AI to be their voice and it's not them, right? And stuff. And so, you're hearing every day, oh yeah, take all this information, and they treat it like Google, right? They treat it like Google. They just ask questions and, it's a language model and it'll come up with an answer. Might not be an accurate answer, but it is an answer, right? And so they think, oh, wow, that sounds so good, because that's what they want to sound like. But you said something a second ago that I think is really important in this answer, which is that I think when people start out, they work a lot towards target market. They hear about target market. Oh, you need to make sure that you're talking to your target market. That's just step one. Really, the most important thing is, are you talking to your target buyers? Really, are they your target buyers? And your target buyers are people who have a problem and you have a solution, but they're actively looking for that solution, which changes everything. So when you're using AI, to get back to that, you need to make sure that you're speaking to them and that you're having AI help you if that's what you're using it for. So I think the best ways that people can use AI, literally, I use it every single day. Do I use it to write for me? No, I don't. Do I use it to enhance what I already write? Yes, not always, but yes, I do. But I think it's important to just embrace and have it be your voice because you trained it to be your voice. I mean, my AI when I first started doing AI, now I have a magazine, right? I published a magazine. I took every article that I've ever written and I fed it to AI so it would know my voice. I took blog posts, I took social media posts, I took my heart speech. I don't know if you know what that is, but I took my heart speech And I uploaded all of those things in there so that it would know my voice. Then I could ask it to do things from my voice and it would speak that way to me. And then it's really learning about prompting. Now, I'm a prompt engineer, so I'm really, really good at prompting. Input equals output. It doesn't matter whether you're
Mhm.
using AI or not. Input always equals output. So the better the input, the better the output, which is kind of like questions, right? The better the
Yeah.
questions, the better the answers, right? So I feel like when people are first embracing I think you should think of it like an assistant and just delegate things to it. I use it a lot in my personal life and I have it do a lot of tasks for me that are easy to hand off, right? All the things that are me. Like for me, I feel like in the world of AI, more and more people are craving a human connection than they ever have. So you need to be human. You need to be human. And how you can have AI help you with being human is just having it do things that are you, that you're inputting who you are. And it's just, kind of like being an editor, or it's just kind of like when you would have somebody edit your stuff, or take things to your virtual assistant and say, oh, make this prettier, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. It does those tasks really well. And it does research really well as long as you check it. Because again, input equals output, and it may not always be accurate, but it is really good at those things. I write for Forbes, and we had to sign a contract that said we would not use AI to write any of our content. And I publish a magazine. I don't let anybody do it either, right? I don't want you to use AI to write your content, but I'm totally okay with it formatting it for you, or, making it make better headlines for you, in it so it's easier to read. So I think that there is definitely a place. Research, I think, is probably the best place, ideating, brainstorming, all of those things. It's really good. It'll talk back, it'll kind of input things and stuff. So I think it's really good, and there's a real place for it. And if people don't embrace it, they're just going to get left behind, because it is the wave of the future for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It did help me create the name for our December 3rd conference, On My Terms, where corporate expertise launches entrepreneurial dreams. So I thought that
Ooh,
was a pretty good headline. And I'm sure you've created your own GPT to act in your voice. Is
lots
that
of
what you're
them.
referring to? Yeah. So I'm working on that myself. But one of the things that I thought of recently was we do these 5-day campaigns on a regular basis. And I asked my online business manager, I said, download all the campaigns for the last 2 years with the open rate and the click through rate. And then I gave that data to ChatGPT and said, identify the campaigns that had the highest click through rate, and identify the email subject lines that had the highest click through rate. Then we uploaded those two email campaigns that we already had and said, analyze these two campaigns and identify the best practices that led to those higher click through rates. And then it analyzed the email sequences and what they had in common that made them more compelling than the other emails in the sequence. So I think, and then applying that knowledge to the new campaign. So I think, is that good example of what you were talking about, is don't use it to write for you, but use it to analyze the good stuff.
It really is. One of the other ways, on sort of on that line too, is with my magazine and with my podcast, I analyze all of the downloads of my podcasts, like, what the topics are, and I kind of analyze them. And my magazine, I analyze, like you said, the open rates, the click-through rates, and all of that, and have AI analyze, like, what are the topics that people are reading the most? What are the topics of my podcast? So you kind of get to know what it is. It helps you to know what it is that your audience wants, right? And I think it's kind of like the old, oh, well, if you'd like this, you'd like that, right? If you'd like this, if you'd
Yeah.
like that, and I'll do it. Also, the thing that I think it really does for you is everybody on my team, everything we do that we have a process for, we create an SOP, standard operating procedure, for people who don't know
Hmm.
what that is, and what our KPIs are, right? And then I feed those into AI to create a custom GPT for that. So it makes it so much easier. So a custom GPT is just what a process is that now it will automatically do the same process for you. And I have literally turned all of those things into that, and it can do it so much quicker now. And that actually saves you money and time because now I don't have to have a virtual assistant do that for me. Now my virtual assistants can now actually work on other things that help me. And then we create an SOP for that and then create a custom GPT if we can. I mean, not everything can be done that way because not everything fits into a sleek process. But I think that actually really works.
Wow, that sounds so intriguing. I'm going to talk to you offline about that. I want to learn more about how you're doing it. The other thing that you mentioned was there's two more things I want to cover with you. One is the strategic relationship building. So you're a relator. And, how do you leverage partnerships and how do you recommend your clients leverage partnerships and networks to really amplify their voice, amplify their brand, and get into other people's audiences?
That's the name of the game, right? Get other people's audiences.
It is. I mean, I feel like I'm just a newbie here. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. There are some things that I've done and I've done well with the professional networks that I belong to, but I'm looking for new ways, new ways to collaborate and amplify each other's voices. What are you seeing working today?
Oh, this is my favorite. This is my favorite subject. I'm actually giving a speech on it this afternoon. This is one of my favorite things because I feel like this is really how you can grow your business. Really, it is all about the strategic partnerships that you create. So I think the people that are listening, this is where you guys want your pen and paper. So here's the thing that I'm going to say. Look at a couple things that will get you started really easily. Think about what it is that you do and think about who is someone that would work with somebody before you. So for example, I'm in marketing. So somebody who comes before me could be somebody in branding, for example. Okay. So they would make a great strategic partner if they did branding because they have clients that the next step for them would be marketing and we could do that together. But then I don't do websites. So marketing is a huge umbrella, right? I don't do websites. So website people are really great because a lot of times when I work with them, we find that they need to rebrand. So I go to the branding person. Sometimes they need to refresh their website or get a whole new one. And then a website person is really great. So I call that upstream, downstream. So, those are the easiest at first when you're thinking about it. But then think about a lot of times people don't think that a good partner is somebody who they consider their competition. I personally don't believe in competition. I think it's an integrity issue. But here is really where the golden opportunities are. Because, like I said, I'm in marketing and I don't do websites, but website people call themselves marketers, right? So think about who overlaps with you a little bit. Those are your best partners for sure. Mm-hmm. And think about who else does what you do, but maybe they have a different audience. So for me, my ideal audience is women that are 40 plus that have established businesses. So they've been in business for at least a year, right? Not brand new startups, but yet I know all kinds of marketing people who deal 100% with startups. That is what they do. Well, they're a great partner for me because they get them first. And once they're done with that, they need advanced strategy. They need what are they going to do to market? Because that's not what they do. Then they hand them off to me. We do a lot of webinars together, a lot of co-hosting of things together. So think about that. Then if you are in business and you're like, I really want to get into this market. I would really love to get into that market and you want to expand your market. Well, who is doing it successfully in that market? And that might be a good person for you to partner with. So I think that there's literally, I have 9 ways that you can do it off the top of my head that you can literally, we could actually do a whole talk on this. And who are those partners? Because you don't need to do it by yourself. I mean, the best way to get market share is to collaborate with somebody who already caters to that market already. And then if you know what your market is, right, going out and inviting people into your platforms, onto your podcast, into your world, that maybe you can talk to them about how maybe they hadn't thought about getting into, kind of what could you guys do together in your market? They serve your market, but in a different way. Like who serves your exact market, but they do it a little bit differently than you. Those are really good partners. So there's so many different ways that you can partner with people. And there's some really good resources. Like, here's a resource that a lot of people don't think about. I know my clients, so they're like, I never would have thought to do that. But when you're trying to think about it, the best one is Amazon. And people are like, what? But think about it. Who has spent more money on all those descriptions that are in there, in all those books, like all those books? They have spent more money, but who is the person who has spent all that money before they go to Amazon? All those publishers. Publishers don't spend all that money on all those books, whether they're on the New York Times bestseller list or whatever. They have spent lots and lots of money being super clear on keywords, super clear on who their audience is. And then those books may get to Amazon, right? So if you go to Amazon and you do advanced searches, you will find all kinds of not just books of people that you might want to partner with, but look at the descriptions of the verbiage that they are using. And then you can take that verbiage, and if you've trained your AI on what you do, you can populate that verbiage in there and then tell AI that based on this of who you are, and tell it to, without using the same words. I mean, there's a whole prompt for that that I use. Literally, you don't have to think this stuff up yourself. It's already out there.
Wow. I hope everyone rewind that and write that down because that was golden. Never heard about that before, Patty. Such an interesting way to look at it. And, I think the days of affiliate marketing and, oh, you promote my launch and I'll promote your launch, we need to move way beyond that. First of all, the calendar is way too crowded. Everyone's launching something all the time. So it's nearly impossible to promote for someone else. And, doing interesting things like that is amazing. The upstream, downstream. So write that down. And then, we tried something as an experiment this week with other members of the Dames where we put together a LinkedIn show. We serve the same client audience, but we do very different things. One does finance, one does speaking for impact companies, but there is some gray areas. One is a LinkedIn, a media expert, but we do overlap in some areas. But I agree, Patty, we're way beyond the, I'm a competitor to you, because people will always energetically pick the person that they feel most aligned to, that they just feel confident and comfortable with. And there's plenty of room for all of us, certainly with all the people leaving corporate to launch businesses. There's plenty of opportunity for everyone in this space.
Here's one way that I would say would be something that somebody could do. Once you're clear about who you are, right? You're clear. Who do you want to serve? How you want to serve them. You're clear on all of those things, right? So that's the first thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once you know that, I have to tell you, if you want to do partnership, here's another tip to write this down too. You can go into AI. This is where AI is your friend. I go into AI and I say, this is what I stand for. This is who my ideal clients are. This is what I'm looking for. This is the price point. This is how much they're earning, like all the things. I put all of those things. And then after I put all those things in there, then I say, I am looking to partner with, and then I'll say, a female business coach who specializes in this, blah, blah, blah. And then I say all of that, what I'm looking for. And then I say, could you please create a list of 25 female coaches fitting this with their websites and the links to their sales pages. And when they give me the links to their sales pages, now I can actually go look at those sales pages and I can go, oh, well, what are they offering that? Wow, I hadn't thought of that. I actually fill that gap too. I actually could do that too. They don't do what I do. That's why they're partners. Right? They're not my competition. They're partners. But how many of those things could you look at and go, well, wow, I never really thought about doing that. Just like think about your LinkedIn show you just said. I never thought about that. Oh, I never thought about doing that. Where are those gaps and where could you look at that? And then these are their partners. And if you go and look at their websites and you go look at their sales pages, you might be able to say, you know what, that's something I hadn't thought to do. And maybe I could reach out to them and say, oh, I hear that you were doing, a one-day event on this, or you're doing a podcast series on that. And I really feel like I could expand that conversation about this. And I'd be more than willing to now put it out in front of my audience. I mean, my magazine has 235,000 subscribers.
That is amazing. Is that a digital magazine or a print magazine? That is amazing.
It's a digital magazine. It's free. It's a free digital magazine. Not everybody's my client, but it's the way I serve, right? So there's a lot of different ways. I mean, let it find your partners for you. Now, you could go on Google and you could do that same thing, and you could find that, and you could spend hours doing that market research, which we should. But this is where AI can help you. But it's all about input equals output, right? So you need to make sure that you can input all the right things.
Right. So training it on who your ideal client is and your voice and your brand position and all of that. So super important.
You even could ask AI that after it finds those ones, and you can go back in there and say, oh, I really relate with this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then ask AI to create the pitch for you. It'll even do that.
Yeah. So I know that this podcast is going to be evergreen. There'll be people listening to it at various stages of their year. Right now, we're entering Q4. So, and I know revenue boosting strategies are a passion of yours. So what I'd love for you to share is, one or two tips on how do you squeeze the most potential out of the fourth quarter of the year and set yourself up for success in Q1. What tips do you have for our listeners on that?
Okay, I have two big tips. One of them is probably going to be something that you're going to be like, wow, I never thought of that. So the biggest thing that I do at the end of the year happens in November, and I call that November. November. And that is when I audit everything I've done. We have a tendency to just keep adding to our plate, and we don't ever take anything off our plate. Like maybe it aligned with us 2 years ago, but it's really not aligned with us or the services that we offer now. So every November, I do it for me and I do it for all my clients, and we audit everything that we're involved in and ask ourselves, wow, does this still bring me joy, feed my soul? Does it still align with where I am? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, then we write that down and we take that off our plate. If the answer is yes, then the question is not just ROI, because I think a lot of times people think ROI is return on investment. I actually like to think of ROI also as return on influence, and really be thinking about that and say, well, this is really good. What would happen if I said, I want to get more involved? What if I said, I want to step up into a leadership position in that or something else? So I look at it and I say, is this something I need to step away from? Or is it something I need to step out or step up? That's sort of my motto. So that happens at the end of the year, and I set goals around it and how it's going to perform in the next year. Now, talking about at the end of the year, how is that going to affect your beginning of the year? I'm going to say right now that if you're actually only setting goals at the end of the year, your first quarter is already going to suck. So let me just tell you that, because you should be working on goals for the new year, like in August, really for them. Not to say that there's not things you can do to finish the year strong, but start thinking about that earlier. The next thing is, what can you do with those partners that you're working on, and start thinking about how could you bundle things together, whether it's product or services? What kind of things can you plan? So I like to look and say, what do I have going on? Oh, I have a book coming out and it's going to come out in April. Oh, one of my partners, they're actually going to be doing this event and it's going to be in September. So start thinking about what those things are. Once you identify what your partners are doing as well as the big things, also start thinking about anniversaries and birthdays and when you don't want to be doing things, because what you don't want to do is just as important. So you know to block that time out. And then start thinking about, what can I do to support them? Is there a way for me to support them by doing something or combining something? So if they're going to have a book launch, so I know both of us, do a lot of work with the Laurens, really honestly for me, I'm launching a Dames chapter here. We talked about the Dames, and I immediately went to them and said, oh, I'm going to have my founding members. Would you be willing to do a workshop for them? Now that puts them in front of my people, and it puts my people in front of them. They're my partners and stuff. So I start thinking about, what could I create and what could I do that showcases my partners by putting them in front of my people, but also puts me in front of theirs, which I think is really whether that is creating maybe a new package together, whether it is just coming up with something on your own that complements what they do. Like, for example, they are doing their thing, but when somebody gets those things, they still have to know how to market it, right? So it's like, yes. So when you're thinking about it, so think about your partners and then think about what can you co-create in order to support somebody else at the same time as how it helps you build your business. And then the last thing would be thinking about what your customers are that you already have. It costs a lot less to retain a customer you already have than to go out and acquire new customers. So think about where are your customers at and what's the next service that they're going to need that helps them move the needle and move their business forward. And then at the end of the year, usually I do that in like September and October. That's kind of the time to start thinking about, okay, here's where we are right now. Let's think about what do we need to do in the new year, and let's start working on that. September, October is probably the best time to be doing that before people don't always spend as much money in the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they don't, but they don't spend as much. That is the time to be doing that before you're entering into the fourth quarter. That's really, really a good time. And September and October are traditionally some of the best months for getting new clients.
Yeah. So as you're listening to this, we're heading into the time of year where it's great to retain existing clients through another offer. So if they've had great experiences with you up until now and they have needs to go what's next, and if you feel aligned with that what's next, then having an upsell ready for them. I mean, that's a great way to end the year super strong, is by retaining the clients that you already have. That's great advice, Patty. You've dropped so many gems in our conversation today. Would love for you to share, how can our listeners follow you, get in touch with you, maybe get the magazine? What's the best way for them to take the next step with Patty Farmer?
Thank you so much. So the best way to connect with me is to go to my website, which is pattyfarmer.com, Patty with a Y. The magazine is there. The podcast is there. Everything else I do, all my social media is there too. And at the very top of my website is a gift that I have, which is a assessment that literally in 3 minutes or less will look at 7 different areas of their business and tell them, here's where I'm excelling. Here's where I'm doing really good. Here's where I'm doing okay, could do some tweaks. And here's where maybe I could need some help, but it'll break it all down for you. So if they just go to pattyfarmer.com, they'll get all of those things, and all of them are free.
pattyfarmer.com. All right, my friends. So hopefully you will take action based on what you learned today. Start training AI to do some work for you. Explore partnerships and collaborations, and certainly get your audience targeted. Start speaking to them in relevant terms of their voice, their issues, what they need to know. So thank you, Patty.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for now, my friends. We will see you, and you will hear from us next week on Life After Corporate. Till then, be well. Thanks for listening, my friend. If you enjoyed this show, please head over to iTunes and subscribe and leave us a review. And be sure to hop over to the Life After Corporate Facebook group and join other growing entrepreneurs to get weekly tips on how to create more money and meaning doing work you love.